very sophisticated beginning practice, and we won't see a lot of 5s in our scoring. But it is something to aspire to, which I'm going to get to in a second. Oh my goodness, I am really going to have to whip through these. Alignment. A few words about getting our ducks in a row. We did not ignore all of the other standards out there in the universe. In fact, we've looked very closely at the relationship between EdTPA, the Common Core, the INTAS standards, the National Board Standards and Design, NCATE and CAPE, the SPA organization standards, and of course, our good friend Charlotte Danielson's framework. There are points of alignment with all of these. We have various crosswalks that are either in draft form or spit and polished and ready for publication to the world. I did a little bit of thinking recently about the new CAPE standards, and then the draft standard 1 for CAPE has beautiful alignment with a number of aspects with EdTPA, and I highlighted in red here this, again, discipline-specific knowledge and skill and strategy, which is what EdTPA is all about. I would say that for the first element of those CAPE standards, draft standards, all of the EdTPA rubrics provide information about this big, broad standard. And if we go down a little layer of grain size, their element 1.2 on instructional practice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of our EdTPA rubrics provide direct evidence of what they're looking for CAPE. I could do this for all of the elements for Standard 1. I haven't done it because we don't have time for me to share it today, but we are thinking very carefully about it. We already have a document posted on TPAC Online, and it's probably on our public website as well, that describes points of alignment with the current NCATE standards. And we've been working closely with the SPAs. We've sort of waiting until the SPA organizations finalize their standards, and then we will have them good to go, because not all the fields are ready. Another big feature here that we're very proud of is that EdTPA offers 2 opportunities. Centralized scoring in the Pearson platform and local evaluation that will inform program renewal conversation. Who scores? This is another myth. Somehow along the way, people got the idea that if EdTPA was involved with a vendor, then anybody off the street could score. And so we set some guidelines to make sure that we don't have blood donor scores, but on the other hand, have quite well-prepared, well-qualified, rigorous people who understand teaching and learning. And so we have an expectation that half of the scores for EdTPA are from higher ed faculty or alt-cert programs, and the other half are from P12 education. We hire a number of national board teachers and those who have scored for national board. They all have to be subject matter experts, having taught in that field either with credential candidates or P12 learners in the last 3 years, and experience working or mentoring, supervising beginning teachers. I've got 3 slides here on the rigor of the scoring training, but I'm going to skip those. We can talk about it later. But I want to spend a few minutes talking about local evaluation. So yes, when EdTPA is consequential for a campus or for a state, scoring happens in the Pearson platform by these highly qualified individuals who've had many, 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 many hours of training and calibration and back reading. However, for programs to truly understand the assessment and the performance of their candidates, scores are not enough. Just getting numbers is not enough. Having processes of engaging in inquiry with your colleagues, with your P12 partners, looking at your candidate's own work is powerful. And so we are hoping that as people use EdTPA, they will continue to use the powerful local evaluation conversation. And we have developed and recently trained over 600 faculty in a number of states around the country to engage in local evaluation so that you continue to look at the products and the performance of your candidates, not merely looking only at scores. And we are providing these materials for everyone. Rigor, reliability, and validity. The work is underway to ensure that EdTPA is highly reliable. And the changes and the rigor in the scoring training design and our recent just looks at preliminary data look quite promising. But I want to spend a little bit more time on validity, but not too much time because I'm whizzing along here. Content and face validity are just, you've got to have them. our work with the SPA organizations and with subject matter organizations is telling us that we got the content validity and the face validity right. We will also be doing predictive validity studies, and you can't do predictive validity studies until people who have done the assessment have been teaching for a couple of years, and after this year we will have enough field test candidates we can begin to follow them. But I will say that for assessments of this type, National Board, the best portfolio in Connecticut, and also with PAC-TE, there have been some small studies done that show candidates who perform well on these performance-based assessments have stronger teaching in the field, and that plays out with improvements in student learning by multiple measures, not merely value added. I find the consequential validity studies the most intriguing, and that's where we're going to get to item number 10 on my top 10 list. And CAP, PAC, and Tina Sloan, along with Dr. Gallucci, published a study in Jim's very journal in JTE in 2010. In fact, it won the award for Article of the Year for 2010, and there it was a systematic study of the consequential validity of PAC-TE and how campuses use the data and engaged in inquiry to improve programs. You might also note the New Educator Journal had a themed issue on teacher performance assessment. It came out in January or February 2013, and there's a series of articles describing our work in California with PAC-TE and how campuses benefited and learned from and had bumps in the road with PAC-TE implementation, which leads us to our next piece. I started the talk by saying that this is not an off-the-shelf, plug-it-in test. It's a process. An educative assessment of this type requires careful consideration for implementation, and we have not forgotten about that because we invest in the preparation of implementation support materials with our community, with our colleagues in the profession, to make sure that people can use the assessment in ways that inform their own inquiry about their programs. So we have a couple of websites. The public website is listed at the top, and we have TPAC Online, the membership platform now with over 4,000 people. If you would like to join, there's an email address right there at the bottom, and these slides will be available to anyone who likes them tomorrow. So you will have this. What kind of resources have we developed in partnership with AACTE and many of our collaborating campuses? There are a whole variety on TPAC Online. Some of my favorite ones, there's one for orienting candidates and also for orienting cooperating teachers that Jenny Whitcomb from University of Colorado Boulder developed for us. And she sets exactly the right tone and provides exactly the right grain size to help people, candidates and their cooperating teachers, to understand what this assessment is for and how they can engage in it together. We're also very pleased with our Making Good Choices document, which supports candidates with making good decisions about how they design their learning segment and prepare their materials. It's a supplement to the assessment handbook. There's always questions about video and so on, and we will, so we've offered some guidelines there. And we also offer to cooperating teachers and university field supervisors, university faculty, a set of guidelines for what is acceptable support and what is too much coaching as a candidate is doing this in the end game. So I have a few slides on what's in it for candidates, what's in it for a state, what's in it for our P12 partners, but I want to pause a little longer here on what's in it for teacher ed. I don't think there's a person in the room whose core value isn't, so let me start again. Every person in this room holds as a core value the preparation of teachers so they can serve the learners in your state, in Pennsylvania. You would not be here today if that was not your core value. And we all know that it's harder and harder and harder to get teachers ready for the job. And any tool we can have that provides us with evidence about what our candidates can and cannot do, we should make useful to us, not merely have it be something inflicted on us by some kind of a mandate. So I'd like for you to think about how you might engage in an assessment of this type to answer some of your own questions. about what's working, about what your candidates are struggling with, about how you might provide them with deeper or richer clinical experiences, how your methods courses might be better aligned with your foundations courses or your clinical field experience, all those knotty questions. How can you get data to help you answer them? And how might EdTPA be useful in that regard? So I invite you to engage in some inquiry in thinking about this assessment or assessments of its type. I invite you to consider how you might engage your faculty to develop a culture of evidence. Not merely siloed and each person, oh, that's my course, I'm going to do it my way, but to really start to engage in the collegial conversations about what's working and what we can get better at for the purpose of preparing our candidates for those children. I have a few more slides here about some learned experiences and some curricular changes from campuses around the country. This list here is from my own home campus, San Jose State. We used our PAC data to redo our whole assessment system with embedded signature assignments in every course, and we used the data to recognize that our candidates were still struggling with academic language, and even though we had a few strong faculty in that area, not everybody understood it deeply enough to support them once they got to their clinical field experiences. So we spent 2 years doing deep, ongoing faculty professional development with experts from our campus and some other resources, so we all fully understood it to make sure our candidates did as well. University of Washington, Seattle reconfigured one of their semesters so that they had an assignment that cut across 3 courses and dipped into the clinical experience. So planning, instruction, and assessment became seamless. It wasn't separated in 3 courses, but it became one idea, one set of ideas that all the faculty embraced together. From Illinois State University, significant changes to their special ed program. The one that I'm most fond of is their reflective journals in the clinical practice, where they started using EdTPA-like prompts to get their candidates to think more deeply about their experiences in the field. Cincinnati University of Ohio, they started thinking about how to backfill or foreshadow some of the EdTPA knowledge and skills into their undergraduate general ed course. Particularly the one focused on technology. So they started having this cross-university conversation about some of the knowledge and skills they were expecting of their teacher ed candidates, so they had ample opportunity and formative opportunity to practice. And then lastly, at Vanderbilt, they took what they call disciplinary literacies and embedded it in all of their secondary content methods courses, using some ideas from EdTPA along the way. I'm going to just comment on their last point. And I heard this comment from a woman in Wisconsin. We were there last October for an implementation conference that included faculty from all 13 University of Wisconsin campuses. It was state-sponsored, and they had 230 people who came. And we were sitting around the table, we were doing job-alikes. People from course in common came and sat together. And I was sitting with the social foundations faculty. And after we had a long dialogue about the ways in which EdTPA was aligned with and supported candidates' abilities to teach in equitable ways and to reflect their commitment to social justice and equity, one educator rose her hand and she said, you know, folks, we have never had an assessment, a statewide assessment that requires candidates to show what they know from our course, from our multicultural foundations course, or our social foundations course, our philosophy of ed course, and our psych foundations course. It usually is all about methods or it's all about content knowledge. She said, finally, here's our chance to show that foundations matter, because candidates have to show what they know about children and communities and families in order to be successful on that assignment. And as a Psych Foundations person, my hair stood on end, and I was very pleased to see the recognition that this assessment wasn't just something very important, wasn't just about having a set of teaching skills, but it was about developing a mindset that teaching is inquiry. Teaching is knowing your students well and making sure that every child in your care is a learner at the best of their ability. I think I'll end there.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Whittaker.
And I apologize, Jane, I went over.
That's okay. Dr. Whittaker, if they could save their questions and bombard you either at lunchtime or on the panel, if you're okay with that, I'd appreciate that. Join me one more time in thanking Dr. Whittaker. Could I just ask, we have a number of attendees who are still out in the hallway. If there are seats next to you, can you just raise your hand so we know where to send them if there's an empty seat? Not many, but, and there are two I can certainly move from up here. So please let me share with you that we're going to move quickly to the panel. If you do need to use the restroom or need another cup of coffee, you're on your own. There's not really a formal break. And I'm sorry? Hands up again for the seats. And if I could have the panel come move to the front, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.